Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio, and it is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Glad to be here. Had some trouble getting into my switchboard and my chat room here tonight, but I finally got in and had problems with all kinds of stuff here tonight regarding Skype and my connection here. So hopefully I'm streaming and hopefully you can hear me. I just never know until the show is over whether or not people whether the show actually was good or not. It just depends, right? So sadly enough, it's just not a perfect system, but that's all right. So yeah, glad to be here. Glad to be able to do these shows. Continuing on, I forget how many shows I've done now. Almost 650 shows. I think I'm nearly at, and that's a lot of shows. Thanks everybody for tuning into my shows. There's been so many people who have been listening to my shows for so long. I can imagine that after a while, it's probably, I don't know. Like, I don't mind doing them, but I can imagine somebody who's tuning in all the time. Thank you very much for spending the time with me and taking the time to tune in to what I have to say regarding child abuse and child abuse prevention. And I just thank everybody who's doing anything out there to help save children's lives and to help make a difference in this fight against child abuse. This is such a huge issue. I'm devoting the rest of my life to it. It took me until the age of 41 to realize that I could get involved and I could be a voice. I could do something, you know what I mean? And so I just wanted to be one more voice out here along with everybody else's who are speaking out publicly, to raise awareness and promote education regarding child abuse and to really speak out against it and to stand up for child rights. And so, thank you very much for being here with me on this journey, and I appreciate it. I'm not a counselor or therapist or anything like that. I'm not, I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows. And I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children and, volunteer position, which I love doing. And really it's our goal to stop child abuse. And so, we're going to go national. We are national, really. But we're going to go all out, and people will hear about us, and people will, lots of people do know who we are, in the tens of thousands, but we're going to go nationwide, and we are going to take this thing all the way, and hopefully be able to save, so many children's lives, right, in the future. And that's the issue. Tonight there'll be so many children dying at the hands of a parent, a caregiver, someone who's got a hold of a child, and we will not be able to help them. We will not be able to get to them. We will not be able to save them. It's very, very sad. So many children will end up in the hospital due to abuse-related injuries. So many children will just be left within the home to suffer the abuse. This is a serious reality for these children, and this just breaks my heart. And that's why I'm doing this, because I know while I'm sitting here, drinking my coffee and hanging out in my apartment heading towards 50, that I grew up in an abusive home. I know what it's like for these kids. And it just breaks my heart that people would choose to do something like this to their children, which they do all the time. People choose to abuse, right? It's a choice they make. They're making the wrong choice on behalf of children. And, whether it's the parents, caregiver, somebody within the home, somebody who has access to the child, even teachers, coaches, daycare workers, strangers in the stores, people who choose to hurt a child, right? They're doing it on purpose. It is with intent, you know what I mean? And that's abuse, right? And sadly, there's parents out there who accidentally have hurt their children and they feel horrible about it. Of course they do. And this is an accident, real accident. And they would never want to intentionally hurt their children. And then there's other people who sadistically and systematically abuse their children, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, whether it's child sexual abuse, whether it's neglect. They do it on purpose, right? And they know it's wrong, but they do it anyway. And then there'll be some that actually may not realize that it's wrong because some sort of mental illness or, something wrong with them behaviorally, psychologically, that, prevents them from having empathy, from being able to properly raise a child. But for the majority of them, they know what they're doing. And, it's very, very sad. It's horrific. And these poor kids, you see these headlines rolling in. This is what we do with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, really promoting awareness and education regarding child abuse. And so we're looking at this stuff all the time, and it is horrific, And the sad thing is nobody should have to be doing that, because if everybody would stop abusing their children, then we could all go find something else to do, right? But until child abuse is stopped, I devoted the rest of my life to promoting awareness and education regarding child abuse. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I wish I would have started 20 years ago, but, I'm glad I finally got off the couch even 4 years ago. So, do whatever you can in your own capacity, within your own capabilities, to be a voice for these children out here, today and tomorrow and the next day, who need our voices, and they need something done now. And they need something done now within our own countries, North America. I'm all for promoting, the worldwide issue of child abuse because it's a worldwide problem. But we've got to get this thing under control in our own countries. If we can't, with $105 billion being pumped into the system in the United States alone every year because of child abuse, you'd think we could get something done. But, sadly enough, people are still choosing to abuse their children regardless of whether $105 billion is being spent annually because of child abuse. Nobody cares, right? Well, I care because I know what these kids are going through, and I know that there's lots and lots of people that care about these poor children, and there's got to be something that we can do. And I know there's programs that work because I do the research and I study it out. And anybody else can too. It's all public information on the web, right? It's just, it takes a few minutes to look it up, right? And you have to spend a few hours kind of looking around, But you can find it. There are programs that do work, have been proven to work, and were complete successes. The problem being is that they were in one school district in one town, and they helped 80 children. Well, that's great, 80 children, that's awesome. 80 children did not ever suffer abuse, and their families were kept together. The families got help. Everybody was happy. 80 children were saved from a lifetime of horrific abuse. But you know what, though? That's just one group of 80 children. What about the rest of the country? What about North America? What about Canada? It's just so incredibly sad that there's federally funded studies that they know work, but they can't do them. They can't implement them within the communities and within the school districts, every school district, so that no child should ever be abused again, right? Because it costs too much money. It's all about the almighty dollar. That's exactly what it comes down to, and that's sad. Because that's the reason I volunteer for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, because it's not about the money. You know what I mean? A lot of people work to help stop child abuse, and they want to make a lot of money doing it. Now, that's a fact. But, it's, there's people out there that could be volunteering to do a lot of stuff because they don't even need the money. There's people out there with loads of money that don't need the money, that could be doing something to help make a difference, But those people, they don't want to volunteer. They just want to make more money. So these kids, nobody, there's a handful of people that care about these children out here right now, who right now, as I'm talking, are being horrifically abused, sexually abused, raped, killed, murdered at the hands of someone who's gotten a hold of the child, and whether it's a parent, caregiver, or whoever, makes me sick, and it's like, and it all comes down to the mighty dollar, that stupid dollar bill, makes me sick that's worth more than a child's life. But it's true, nothing is worth anything. The money is what it's all about. And that makes me ill, because people's lives should definitely come before money. And these are poor little children's lives who need protection. These children are vulnerable. Children are vulnerable. They are most vulnerable. They cannot protect themselves. And so it just, I don't know, I'm going to continue to do this, whether anybody's listening or not. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm doing these shows, you know what I mean? I do appreciate everybody who's tuning in, but I will be going hopefully worldwide, on a worldwide scale, hopefully soon, I'd like to get involved. Hopefully, this is my 5-year goal, 5 to 10-year goal. I hope to be going extremely far in this and being extremely noisy and extremely loud about this, so that people wake up and smell the coffee. This is ridiculous. And these poor children out here, my God, they do not deserve this. And I'm willing to stand up and do it. You know what I mean? And so it's sad. There's so many people that are not willing to stand up and protect children. They're not willing to stand up and protect their own children. They'll allow their own children to be abused, or they'll allow an abuse to go on within their families or extended families. They know about the abuse, but they don't make the call. They don't care. It comes down to the bottom line. They care more about themselves or their future, their family, rather than that child. It's like, well, if we send so-and-so off to jail because if they're found guilty of abusing, so-and-so, then what's going to happen? Who's going to pay the bills? So, see, the bills come over the child, right? The bills that come before the child. This is where people's priorities have gotten way out of line, and this is why this has to stop. Right, we have to make a change in this, and the only way to do it is through education. We are going to have to break the cycle of abuse. We're going to have to break the cycle of violence. It's going to have to happen with our young people. At the rate we're going now, it's not looking good. You know how many people who are going to graduate this year, go off? Some will go to college, and some will have children. And do you know how many of those people are going to abuse their children? Lots and lots. We're going to see more and more, people between the ages of 18 and 20, 22, 25 abusing their children, killing their children, little infants, little babies, precious little babies, just killing them, not even realizing that all they have to do is do the right thing and take that child to the proper authorities and just say, look, I cannot look after this child. Better to give the child a chance somewhere else, even if it's not a perfect system. It's better that child should have had a chance than be murdered and killed at the hands of the person who was supposed to be protecting them and caring about them. You know what I mean? So the system's not perfect, so who cares? At least give them a chance to survive. Whether even if it's not that great, they still have a chance to live and to grow up. These little children and babies are being killed and murdered at the hands of people that brought them into this world. It makes me sick. And sentencing needs to be so much tougher, and things have to change, right? But they won't change as long as people just don't care and go on about their business. Oh well, it doesn't matter to me, It's not my problem. That's so many people's attitude towards anything in life that, if it doesn't directly affect them, then they don't even care about it. And they don't care about having to pitch out the tax money for it. They just don't care about anything, right? There's a lot of people like that. And, that's okay. But just be really, really glad that you're not one of those children. And so many people say, well, I was abused as a child. Well, then you should know that you should be doing something to help stop child abuse, right? It took me forever to get off the couch, so I know. That's why I tell people that. I want people to know the truth. I was sitting around at the age of 40 years old thinking, man, I'm so happy there's people out here doing this awesome work for these people. You know what I mean? For children, for people. It's great to see all these lovely people doing all this awesome work. And I was kind of looking up to them thinking, wow, that's so awesome. Then I thought, I can get involved. What am I doing sitting on the couch when I can get involved in some way? It may be to me, it may seem kind of small, but small and insignificant. And the thing is when everybody's doing something, it does matter. It does make a difference, right? So that's why it's so important that we all get involved, right? It's huge. These kids are dying. Like tonight, I just thought about that. I think about it all the time, but especially tonight, I thought about it. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm having a coffee and hanging out and doing these shows, and in the meantime, so many children are being abused right now, and many of them will die because of the abuse, and it's so sad. So we have about 15 minutes left. So you have to listen to my shows at your own discretion, right? All of my shows. Like I'm talking about abuse. Abuse is a sensitive subject. It's a lot of people find it uncomfortable. So you have to know what's good for you to listen to. So all of my shows, you have to listen at your own discretion. And young people under the age of 18, you have to have some permission to listen to my shows, any of my shows, because I'm talking a lot about adult sort of material. There's, it's older adult material, and I don't know how young the kids are who may be listening to this show. So have someone listen to the show with you, a parent or caregiver, somebody who's looking after you, who's an adult who can help you make that decision whether or not you should be listening, age appropriately, right? You'd be doing yourself a favor and me a favor. Learn how to keep yourself safe online. If you're a young person, you need to know how to keep yourself safe online, right? It's so important. So I want to continue on with this PDF that I found. I have a good friend here in the chat room. She's actually a volunteer with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And hello, I'm glad you could be here, Trina. Yeah, this is a PDF, and it's looking at the worldwide issue of child abuse and neglect. The title of the PDF. We're on page 1415. But this is called Child Abuse and Neglect by Parents and Other Caregivers. And I'm just going to scroll down. It's actually called A World Report. It's let me get the actual real title. World Report on Violence and Health. And I'm sure that I got this off the Child Welfare Information Gateway. When I just downloaded the PDF, but I didn't save the link. And the link, for some reason, they didn't put the link in the doc, which is very, very strange because the links are always in the doc. And so in the PDFs and whatnot, so I'm just not sure why the link is not attached to this particular document. But I'm sure that I got this from the Child Welfare Information Gateway because I do a lot of research on there. And I was probably looking under the letter C for child abuse, right? And so if you look in on the Child Welfare Information Gateway, they have an A to Z index for all their publications and whatnot, and all the resources and information that they have. And you can look under each letter and bring up all the information regarding whatever topic it may be, right? Neglect, N for neglect and C for child abuse and whatnot. So I'm pretty sure that's where I got this particular PDF. So it's taking a look at the worldwide issue, and taking a look, which is kind of something that, I mainly cover on Saturdays with my, worldwide epidemic of child abuse and human rights abuses. But it's a huge issue worldwide. This is absolutely insane what's going on with children all around the world, right? We're focusing on Dream Couches for Abused Children right now, mainly focusing on North America, right? But anybody around the world who wants access to our printed materials can get a hold of them. And we're working on getting our website set up with a translator so that people can click on a language and it can be translated, the page can be translated into their own language. And so that's something that we are working on. And I know that a lot of the publications and printed materials that we have, we're working on getting them translated into other languages because people, English-speaking people around the world can get a hold of our materials and read them. But someone who speaks, another language might have difficulty reading those. So we're trying to actually set it because we want people to have access to our information around the world, right? And so it's just important, for people to know this is a worldwide issue. This has got to change. These poor children around the world, it just makes me sick here. Even what's going on in North America, even with the CPS and DHS and all the Child Protective Services and everybody and all the programs and everybody that's involved, and you think about the amount of children who are being killed and murdered every day at the hands of a parent or caregiver, and you think about all the children ending up in the children's hospitals because of abuse every day, right? We only see a portion of the headlines because the issue is that a lot of this is not getting any media coverage. Not every child abuse case gets media coverage. I hope people know that. And not every murdered child gets media coverage either. It depends on, if it happens to be reported, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If the newspaper decides to pick it up as a story and run it, then they do. Otherwise, these children go just anonymously to their graves. Nobody knows. Nobody cares. Well, we do, right? And there's a whole lot of people that do. But worldwide, you think about the issue worldwide. My God, this is absolutely horrific. And it's been going on forever. And I just find it so disturbing and so sad that in the year 2011, we still haven't figured it out. It's a matter of an issue of the heart. It's what people intend to do to a child. How can you have such evil in your heart, I don't know how these people can do this to children and think, for whatever reason, justify it in their minds that it's okay to hurt a child or that it's okay to do what they do to children, sexually use them or, even neglect. Neglect is deadly. A lot of people think neglect is no big deal. Neglect is actually the most common form of child abuse, and it's deadly. And if it doesn't kill the child physically, they will suffer from the consequences of neglect forever. And you think about the children who are being neglected around the world, it's absolutely horrific. So this particular PDF, page 14, says what can be done to prevent child abuse and neglect. And I think we were sort of looking at this last week on Thursday night. And while the prevention of child abuse is almost universally proclaimed to be an important social policy, surprisingly little work has been done to investigate the effectiveness of preventive interventions. And they said careful work has been done on a few interventions, such as home visitation, but many more interventions in this field lack adequate evaluation, and especially worldwide, because who's keeping track, worldwide? That's what I was talking about Thursday night, was the fact that, there's no infrastructure within a lot of these countries, They just don't have, especially the developing, the countries that are not really fully, developed, they're just still lagging behind in every, human services, area. And there's no money, there's no funding there's no way to even keep track of how many children, how many home visitations were successful, how many interventions were done, and they're working on it. Many countries are actually working on implementing this stuff with, into their the human services. But the thing is it's still really far behind. So they really don't know the numbers. They just don't have any idea really of the numbers in many of the countries of how many children, were abused, how many children have been abused, how many children are slipping through the cracks, right? How many children are getting help, right? It's pretty sad, right? The majority of programs focus on victims or perpetrators of child abuse and neglect. Very few emphasize primary prevention approaches aimed at preventing child abuse and neglect from occurring in the first place. And the more common responses are described below. So primary prevention is huge, and that's what we do. Dream Couches for Abused Children is a primary prevention group, and there's primary prevention, secondary prevention, tertiary prevention, and just from reading up on Child Welfare Information Gateway, primary prevention is listed as being the number one way to stop child abuse. The reason being is because it stops the abuse before it happens. It gets a parent some help before they lash out at their child. It makes a parent think before they hurt their child. Education. That's what it's all about. It helps a young parent, a new mother to be, to want to get the information on how, the developmental stages and what to expect from their children, so they're toddlers, they're infants, they're babies, so that they don't hurt their children, or that it talks about discipline and the differences between discipline and abuse. To parents who may not realize that what they're doing is hurting their children and they think it's discipline. So it's to stop the abuse before it happens, and it's all through education. It's mainly through promoting awareness and education, and that it is the number one way to go because it stops the abuse before it happens. And secondary, tertiary prevention is really important because, of course, those people are the people that work with children who are at risk for more abuse. Maybe the parents have already been brought up on charges. There's already been abuses, within the home, and so they've been brought up on some type of charges, and there's home visitations going on. Well, of course, those people are very, very important. But what we need to do is stop child abuse, right? Let's just stop child abuse, right? I think this is just so silly that we have to keep saying this, but I don't mind saying it, so I'm just going to keep on saying it. I know there's a lot of people out here who agree with me, and we're just going to keep on saying it, until we stop child abuse, right? Because this is how absolutely ridiculous it is that parents think that they can hurt their children and that it's perfectly okay. No, it's against the law, And thank God for the laws, you know what I mean? I am all law. I'm talking total pro-law, and I believe in the laws. I uphold them, and I think that it's very important for people to realize that abuse is against the law and that it's wrong in every way. So even if it is against the law, and some people don't care about that, it's just wrong to hurt a child. It's wrong to abuse a child in any way, right? So I don't mind saying that. I know a lot of people have a hard time saying that. Almost can't even force the words out of their mouth, right? But I don't care. I'm going to keep on saying it. Family support approaches. Training and parenting, we were talking about that. That's a huge issue because a lot of people they might have been abused themselves. They might have grown up in a dysfunctional home with little or no, parenting skills taught to them, just, being, properly brought up themselves. They might take on these dysfunctional, just behaviors and, abusive behaviors and just pass it on, right? And they might not have any education regarding child development, This is the issue, right? A lot of parents can benefit from information, to help them to understand what stages their children will be at what ages, and, how they can sort of, there's things that you can do sort of to help yourself as a parent when your children are going through these stages. And it's easier, I guess at the time it's a little harder on a person's nerves, than it is just for us to sit here and talk about it. But just to know that there's support groups, especially within North America, there are support groups out there that help young, struggling parents, right? But in many countries, they just don't have they don't have those types of resources. You think about some of these countries, for instance, like Afghanistan. I always talk about Afghanistan, but it's pretty much because I know a lot about Afghanistan, right? I study all things Afghanistan. And so I kind of, I'm sort of studied up on it. I've sort of been paying attention to it for a long time now. And it's an issue where, it's a huge issue. People, they're brought down to such a level of, poverty and a level of survival mode only, right? That's what they live in all the time, is just trying to survive day to day. And so the children, obviously the parenting skills and whatnot have degraded. They probably used to be a lot better. And because of this issue with the wars and the Taliban for 30 years, fighting this crazy, internal war that's just rampaged and trashed their country, all of their human services are gone. There's like 2 hospitals in the whole country, and women are not even allowed to access them half the time. You know what I mean? That's the issue, right? And children have more rights than the women do, for sure. But especially the male child, they do. The female child, of course, would have less rights. But the thing is the women absolutely have no rights, 0 rights. So there's no help for those people. And even when somebody tries to help, they end up getting shot or blown up or whatever. There's lots of people within their own country that do try to help families who are struggling and help women that are struggling and help to help children who are on the street. There are a lot of street children in Afghanistan, just in case people didn't realize that. And quite often the boys are picked up for to be child soldiers, with the different factions fighting. And this is horrific what's happening to children. I was talking about that on Saturday on my show, Worldwide worldwide issue of child abuse and human rights abuses. So yeah, it's a huge issue around the world. That's just one country, but think about South America. You think about Central America, Asia. So many places in Asia that are having so many problems. You know what I mean? Especially with the child sex trade, sex trafficking. Child sex trafficking is absolutely horrific. And they're trying to get these little kids some help, especially these little girls, mainly girls. And it's just horrific because their families half the time sell them off because they need the money. And the girls are the boys are educated, the girls are just shipped off to be some sort of human trafficked, right? It's absolutely horrific, right? This is still going on. That's what bothers me. It's like 2011, and we're still seeing this stuff. It's like, well, why are not more people speaking up? Well, because people are busy, right? Eating their Twinkies, watching TV, right? Vacuuming the carpet and doing, Well, I don't blame people for wanting to have a life, right? I don't blame people. I like to have my life too, right? I mean, I like to sit around and drink my coffee and hang out in my place with, with my pets. But in the meantime, there are things that you can do, and mainly I become educated around that it is happening, and then kind of speak out when you can. Speak out against this stuff, right? Stand up for human rights. It's very important that we do, because they will be taken away. Yeah, the human rights and child rights are only as good as, if we're willing to back them up by standing up for them. They're just on pieces of paper. They're just words on paper, and they mean absolutely nothing if people will not stand up and back them up, right? And so it's very important to realize that. Most countries, actually a lot of countries, have signed the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and does it matter? Not really, because it's just a piece of paper. Is it being upheld within the country? Are the children's rights actually being, looked after? Are they being upheld? Not really, because there's no infrastructure within the country to do that, right? So it's on paper, it looks really good, but it doesn't mean a thing, right? And so that's why it's very important for people to remember, that these rights that these children have, they have the right to life. They have the right to an abuse-free life all around the world, right? And, if we don't stand up and protect those rights and speak out against this, then we're just basically allowing human rights to be taken away. And people have fought and died, for years to obtain these human rights, right? And we do need to stand up and protect them, and stand up and speak out about this stuff, right? Speak out against child abuse, speak out against abuses of all types, and stand up for child rights. Children have no way to protect themselves. They're so vulnerable. They are our most vulnerable, section of society, right? They cannot protect themselves. And so it is literally up to all of us as a society, as a world population, to get involved where we can, to stand up for child rights, right? Because children have the right to life. Every time one of these parents kill their children, they have taken that child's right, their very basic right, to life away. That's why I think that it should be treated as a UN act of what do you want to call that, when somebody who's actually taken they actually bring up dictators on this kind of stuff for taking human life, and it's a very basic right. See, the courts is just such a joke. When a parent murders their child, right, they just go to court and they get a few years in jail. No big deal, slap on the wrist, and then they're back out, to pop out more kids so they can kill those kids too, right? This just makes me sick to my stomach, and it's just overlooked by society. Society doesn't care. I do, and there's a whole lot of people that do care, but there's a whole lot of people that really don't care, and these are people that we work with, right? This is the sad part. These are people that live on our streets. They're in the malls. They go to the same malls we do. Then they go home and they sexually use and kill their children, right? I mean, this makes me sick, but this is the truth, and we work with these people. Probably sit right next to somebody in the next cubicle over who is not going to tell you that they are sexually using their children and beating on them and abusing their children, but they're not going to tell anybody that. Of course not. They don't want to get busted, right? So, I mean, this is really pathetic and really sick and sad, and if we don't speak out against this stuff, then, we're just guilty as far as I'm concerned. So those who are not speaking out, honestly, you cannot stay neutral on this. You either back abusers or you speak out against child abuse, and you speak out against abuse, right? Because there's no middle of the road, right? It's either a choice. It's either you do agree with it or you don't, right? And so everybody get involved, raise your voice, use your own voice, get involved where you can, especially locally and with your own children. Make sure your own children are not being abused, and children in their lives, their friends. Keep your eyes open, learn the signs and symptoms. Learn how to report child abuse, and that you should. If you suspect abuse, you should report it. And if you know a child's being abused, in most places it's the law that you would report it. And so you just should do it anyway, because you should want to save a child's life, right? We're trying to save children's lives here, and that's the main thing. Let's think about these kids tonight who will not make it, and these little precious little babies, 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, 3 months old, 6 months old, 4 years old, 7 years old. They're going to die because someone's going to take their life. And it's generally a parent. Let's keep that in mind, everybody. Have a great night. I'll be back on tomorrow morning, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. And have a great night, everybody. Take good care and keep those kids in your heart, right? Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.